Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. This is where accounting professionals just like you come to learn all the most efficient, powerful, abundant ways to grow their firm, sharpen their sales skills, and have consistent, increasing revenue year over year. I cover topics from pricing, sales, networking, objections, ideal clients, some marketing ideas, and really about how to increase your cash flow and profitability and set boundaries so you have the firm that you've always dreamt of. You're no longer giving away your time for free. You're no longer putting yourself on sale, and you are being paid for the value and worth that clients actually appreciate you for. So you'll learn tips and strategies as well as hear personal interviews from successful accounting professionals. This podcast will show you exactly how to create the firm of your dreams and the life full of abundance. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, and our special guest is a current client of mine. So we have a little case study on how to really create work-life balance when owning an accounting firm and growing it to $1 million. His firm has been established since 2004. He's also an undergrad from the University of Wisconsin and earned a master's degree. He is a licensed CPA in Florida and also a certified tax planner. He brings 32 years of experience in specialized planning and providing sound fiscal management for his clients through proactive tax planning strategies. He brings 32 years of experience and specializes in providing sound fiscal management for his clients through proactive tax planning strategies. But before we welcome Marc to the show, I know that many of you are, sick of completely grinding 14 hours a day, are craving that work-life balance, and, really sick of sacrificing your time with your family and your loved ones and postponing those vacations. I imagine that you're also exhausted from being on a financial roller coaster ride of discounting your fees, not getting paid for your value or your worth, and being seen just as a commodity. So if you are tired of the vicious cycle of pleasing clients and losing sleep and feeling exhausted, depleted, and powerless, it's not your fault. I know that there's a lot of people that are just not prone or taught how to handle those situations. So this is what I have in store for you. My team and I have set aside time in the next 48 hours to speak to some of you personally about how you can apply some of the ideas that we talk about in today's episode. So if today's episode sounds great to you and you learned a lot, then head on over to theabundantcall.com to book your phone call with myself or Denise. Whatever your biggest challenges are, trust me, we've seen it and we know how to overcome it. So remember to head on over to theabundantcall.com. If today's podcast resonates with you and you want to take the leap of faith and jump 2 feet in, just like Marc did. But this call, the purpose of it is to get really crystal clear on where your firm is at right now and what is keeping you stuck, so you get massive clarity to make some shifts and changes. So now let's welcome Marc to the show. Welcome, Marc, to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for taking out the time to be here and share your story and everything with some of our listeners who, might be in a place where you were years ago and really just frustrated in their firms, feeling really overworked, needing that better, life-work balance, which I think you and I even spoke about back in the day. And before we just dive into your story, because today is a unique episode where it's a case study format. Marc and I have worked together, I don't even know, maybe 2 or 3 years now. And he's come a long way. So, Marc, why don't you share with everyone where your firm is and kind of what things were like in the beginning?
Sure. And actually, believe it or not, it's almost 5 years that we've been working together.
I'm way off.
4.5, 5. Yeah.
So
something like that.
Right when I started in 2018 then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where we were in 2017, 2018, I had been really rolling along for years, just sort of doing okay, but wasn't really happy with where things were and where things were progressing. And I was really seeking to change our practice, change how we do things so that we could grow candidly, so that I would be able to generate a higher income, and generate a better lifestyle for my wife and myself.
Yeah. And before that in, 2017, 2018, and you said you were you wanted to grow, but things were just kind of stagnant and you were rowing along, like you shared, rowing like in a boat very slowly. What was it like, and how did you feel that you were like, I really need to make a change?
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I had been doing more or less the same thing over and over again for years, and just doing okay, but not really building what I wanted to build. I was busy constantly, but not making the kind of money that I wanted to make, or generating the sort of growth. It wasn't fun anymore. And that was a problem too. And, we're a small firm. At the time we had 5 or 6 people, when we were mostly local we're in Gainesville, Florida. That's our base. And there just wasn't enough. And I just wasn't happy with how things were. It took me a while to get to the point where, all right, we have to change things. And then a longtime client, a big client, actually sought the services of a bigger firm in South Florida because they were looking for higher end, higher value services in tax planning. And that kind of that was a kind of a shock to me. And basically the question is, how are we going to be able to position ourselves to compete so that we can provide those high level services, we can deliver those high level services, and position ourselves for growth.
Yeah, and really grow so you're happy again, because it sounds like
Exactly.
you weren't even really happy doing the work. Before we dive into how you did that, can you share with everyone, maybe some numbers too, so they get some context, like where you were around 2017, 2018 to where you're at today?
In terms of revenue,
revenue and percentage growth, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I think it really provides some context for the conversation today, and what we're going to be sharing with some other listeners that haven't maybe gotten to their definition of insanity yet, doing the same thing over and over again. And then what was that tipping point for you that we'll get into? But I think it's good to understand where things were before and now where you're at.
Well, like I said, we were at about 5 or 6 people, and we had been at that size for about a decade. And in terms of revenue growth, it had been, somewhere between flat and maybe 5% a year. I mean, we were basically growing with inflation. Maybe if we all remember, it seems like last week when inflation was very low, but we were just really kind of rolling along, and not really having substantive growth. So that's where we were then.
And
now we're team member number 11 started last week. So we're about double the size in terms of people. From that point where we were in 2018, our overall revenue growth, we're on target to have our 4th straight record year in terms of revenue, and revenue's been growing at 15 to 20% a year. So it's really accelerated, so I'm very happy with how things are right now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And granted, it took a ton of hard work. So it doesn't come without a lot of hard work, for sure. I was wondering, Marc, if you could share, specifically, like what were some of the main issues that your firm was having as it related to some of the sales conversations? Because, the reason you've had this 4th straight record year of growth is because a lot of things changed in your sales process, how you communicate with clients, how you take payments from clients, how you got rid of a big client. There's so many elements to it, but what would you say the main issues were for you back then?
Well, there were a few issues. In terms of the sales conversation, we didn't really have a method, a repeatable approach to really explaining to clients and prospects the value that we can that we can deliver, how we deliver that value and really how much it is. So our sales presentations were not as effective as they could be. Even when they were, we weren't asking or getting the kind of fees that our value really should be capturing. And so we were really sort of giving away a lot of expertise and a lot of value without collecting our piece of that.
Right. And I'm sure that got old real quick. And like you said, the definition of insanity led you to some change. But I also know like what was really important to you was your life balance and your work-life balance. And I think for a lot of people here, I'd love to focus on that in the conversation today because, I know we weren't in your sales conversations, not having the repeatable approach. You weren't able to explain your value and weren't really, being able to get the fee for the value, which also created this unhappiness that you shared earlier. What was it like on the work-life balance side for you?
It was not great. Certainly in tax season, working as long as I possibly could and, working, from 8 a.m. till 10 or 11 at night and just struggling and really generating pretty low fees. Work-life balance was really not very good at all. Certainly in tax season, I was working just a ton of hours, 80, 90, there was nobody but me to do a lot of the work that needed to get done. And even at other times of year, we just didn't have the high level, we couldn't afford to have the high level people that could do some of the work that I would like to be doing or that historically I had done. In order for me to spend my time on sales and growth and leading the firm into the future, I need to be able to be out of the day to day. And at that time, I really couldn't. So I didn't end up, like I said, we just kept doing the same thing over and over again without really changing.
Right. And I'm sure that led to your change. So I'd love it if you could share with the listeners, like, what do you feel was one of the most transformational things that you've gained in working with the Abundant Accountant and the program and what you've gained on your journey?
Well, there are a couple of things. One is having that approach. You have the 15-step sort of sales conversation, and in the in the class, we really went over and did a deep dive into each of those elements so that when I come into a sales meeting, I'm very comfortable knowing, what to say, how to present the information, how to respond to the inevitable objections from the prospective client. That's one major thing that has just really made it so much easier to communicate what we have to offer. Another major thing, knowing our value, knowing that we need to ask for the fees that are commensurate with that value, and not being worried if the client says no. I mean, if I quote a fee. If I quote a fee, that's the fee. We're not going to have a negotiation about it. If you want to pay it, that's great. And you will get value, and we will get value. If you don't want to pay it, that's fine. There are you can find other services for less money. I'm not sure you'll do as well, but you can pay less. So that those are two major aspects of what we've gotten out of working with you.
Yep. And I think that just leads to, I mean, you've created this firm, and I hear it from so many people that, I don't want to burn myself out next year. I can't do it again. I can't not see my family. It's really taking a toll on my marriage. I just can't keep going this way. But yet, some people still just kind of stay stuck. And for you, I know travel was really important and that you wanted to design your firm and your life where you could step away and you could rely on your people. You had a team of 5, now you're going on 11, and you're about to go to Europe for 7 weeks. Could you share a little bit about that journey and what you had to implement in your firm each year in order for you to actually go on this 7-week trip that you're about to embark on?
Well, there are a number of things that have enabled this. One is our the first one at the base level is our increased use of technology. Our firm, 4 or 5 years ago, everybody was in the office. We were paperless, but like I say, everyone was in the office and very little remote work. Actually, we had one person that was remote at that time. The pandemic hastened this, but we were, even before the pandemic, we already had half of our people working remotely, and now basically everybody does. We just have one person in the office. So being able to have that infrastructure enables any of us really to work from anywhere. It also enables us, because we're fully remote, we can, when we look to hire, we don't just need to hire locally. We can hire folks from around the country, and that really helps us tap into a bigger, better pool of talent. And so, as we've grown, we've added people. We've added people at the high end of the skill set level. So we have more of those folks that can do what I have historically done, and in terms of the day-to-day work, freeing me up to do basically, the sales and marketing and leadership. And that's now the vast majority of what I do. So yes, we're next week we head to Europe for 7 weeks. I'll be working, sometimes. I'm not away. Right. Exactly. Part-time. But the firm isn't so dependent on me that I can't. In the past, I wouldn't have even been able to think about a trip like this. And now it really wasn't that hard to think about. And I trust that the team that is here will continue. And again, as long as the internet works where I am, I can work from anywhere.
Yep. And, I know we're talking about your journey and what you've created, but so many people, Marc, I hear, I want a better quality of life during tax season. I want to be able to spend time with my kids, go to church, be at home for dinner at nighttime, and just have that peace of mind by making more money and working less. And I think that you've been able to do all of that. What would you say was your biggest fear in making these changes in order to get to where you're at today?
Well, I was concerned that it wouldn't work from the standpoint of, to suddenly start demanding higher fees, in some cases dramatically higher fees, and what that would mean. And an example, one of it's interesting. Early on in this process, I had taken whatever training I to increase my skills, as well as the sales training with you, and I sort of examined some of our client relationships, and I realized that our biggest client, I mean, they were paying us more than anybody, but our biggest client was actually not profitable because of all of the time that, sort of we hadn't really examined it. They were paying us and we were doing the work, and the work had grown much more quickly than the fees had. And when I really examined what it was, I realized it was unprofitable, and this one client was really taking an outsized portion of my personal time as well as staff time. Yep. So, when I presented this to the client, and that we hear about the offer that you can't refuse, I basically gave this client an offer he couldn't accept. I told him we'd be happy to keep doing what we were doing, but the fee would have to triple. I mean, literally, that's what it was. And I knew he was going to leave. Almost anybody would, and he did. That was a little, there was a little gulp there. Yep. I mean, this was a big client at the time. It was,
How much percent of your total revenue was it?
It
So,
was probably it was 7 to 10 depending on the year. So it's a big client. It was a concern. We certainly felt it, but it freed up staff time. Having this client not there freed up significant staff time, created some capacity that we needed. Within a year, we had replaced the revenue and more, and so with better clients, more profitable clients, and we've just sort of grown from there. So when we talk about the growth that we've had, that accounts for the fact that during this period we lost or gave up really
yeah, your
our
biggest
biggest
client.
client.
But, ultimately it goes back to that fear you had. Will it work for me?
Right,
How is this going to work for me? I've been doing the same thing for so many years. And I think that's a
right,
legit fear that a lot of people have when it comes to making these kinds of changes, because what you're doing might not be working out. And in order to make a change, it takes a massive, massive turnaround and probably accountability and transformation in order to make it happen. So I guess I have a question that I'd be really curious. Mark, like what would you share with another accounting or tax professional who, might be in your shoes, just completely stressed, working too much for too little money, not getting the fees, having a hard time communicating their value, like you shared, and just on that hamster wheel, right? On the insanity roller coaster ride. What would you share with them from your perspective and putting in all this work that you've done over the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, I think certainly working with you has been a huge impact, and not just the 8-week course several years ago, but the Sales Masters momentum that we continue to work together. It's just a continual reinforcement of all of that knowledge and the way to present information. And we've talked about this privately, but you are really good to work with, and it's you push me and the others that you work with, sort of out of our comfort zones, and we kind of need to be there. And so
Yeah.
that's very helpful, very impactful. And then another thing I strongly recommend: know what you're worth and demand it, because if you don't ask for the fees that you are that you're worth, you won't get them. And so the only way to sort of get out of this cycle is to push yourself out of this cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, you literally have to push yourself, and sometimes you need to be held accountable to it because, if you want a better firm and you want a, better life at home with your significant other and kids and actually spend that time with them, it takes, I like to call it, and Mark, maybe you can explain it, but, making these changes, there's never a good time. And it's almost like you're putting yourself through a CPA exam boot camp, or you're doing a mini tax season when you make these shifts. But on the other side, you get to go to Europe for 7 weeks. You get to have a whole different firm. I mean, I think your firm, should hit about $1 million this year in revenue?
That's our expectation. Yes.
That's massive with just 11 staff members, and you get to work part-time while traveling the world. So kudos to you. I'd love to know, though, is there anything else that you would like to share with the listeners about, the challenges that you had and also those fears that came up for you? Because I know it is terrifying and scary to make these changes. And like you said, it took a while to get to you to realize that this definition of insanity needs to, make a change. But what were those fears, or, what were you really kind of terrified about when it came to making the changes, when you decided, okay, enough's enough? What had you get to that tipping point where you broke over the other side?
There were a number of things. I mean, one, the fear of continuing to do what we were doing. I'm in my early 50s now. Life is of limited length, and you only have a limited amount of time to do what you want to do. And so I felt like this was not working, and this was not it, there needed to be more. And so that was a driver. I felt like everything, all of the research that I did, all of the studying that I did, trying to figure out what was next, or what I ought to do, or how I should proceed. You take a risk, and you try to make the best decision you can, and then go for it, and be all in. I remember starting the sales mastery class with you during tax season. I mean, it seemed crazy to me to be doing this in the middle of our busiest time,
Yeah.
but there's never a good time. And the best time to make these changes, if you're going to make the changes, the best time to make the changes is right now. You made it palatable, you made it doable, and it helped during that tax season. As I learned, and I was better in that season, and was able to start generating those higher fees, and having those conversations in a more productive way. So I wouldn't have done it any other way at this point.
Yeah, I forgot you actually did do it during tax season, but I'm sure being tired of feeling that all of your years of experience and technical knowledge and not having it be valued by clients, it really takes a toll on you, and being able to reduce your stress, but not reduce revenue and increase that. And also, you've made massive strides in delegating work and giving it to your team members in order for you to create this life. And, kudos to you. And yes, there's never a good time. What would you say to those who are listening that are also wondering, and having the fear, well, would this work for me? Can I make these changes? I've tried so many other things, programs, coaches, reading books, doing all these CE credits on practice management, and making these shifts, and raising my prices 10%, 20%, and it's still not enough to turn the needle. What would you share to them to give that last word of encouragement?
I think it's really kind of an all in. I mean, you've got to be all in on this, and it's not. I mean, what I get working with you is great on the sales side. We also have a marketing program that is important to us. We also do everything we can to upgrade our skills so that we continue to generate the value. So it's not just one thing, but it's achievable, and in a relatively short amount of time. I wouldn't. I'm not sure I imagined that things would be how they are right now 4 years ago, when we started this. And so and once the train got moving, it becomes easier. And so it required a leap and a commitment, but then it was just, okay, let's just keep doing what we're doing. We're getting the results we want, so let's just keep doing that.
Yep. Yep. And it took a ton of courage from your point, and a ton of effort. So kudos to you, because this does require effort, change, courage, and also trust, and trusting that there is a different way to help you create that freedom and the life that you want, to go to Europe and have that work-life balance. I think that's really what this comes down to. So on a happiness level, Mark, in your firm, on a scale 1 to 10, where is your happiness at? Because I know before that was one of your major things that you wanted to really turn around.
Yeah, I was probably at about a 3 or a 4, and right now I'd say I'm at about an 8. I mean, I'm really happy, but there's still more to do.
Yeah.
There's still more to grow. There's still more mountains to climb. But I'm very confident that we'll do it. And so I'm very, very upbeat about what the future is, the team we have in place, and what we are able to accomplish. And so it's thanks to you and other folks that I've worked with, and our own work. And I mean, it's a big team.
Yeah, and kudos to you too, and having the courage, like I shared earlier, to dive 2 feet in and go all in, because that's how this happened. So Thank you so much, Marc, for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. It's an honor to work with you. It's an honor to have you here sharing your story and your journey with others, and looking forward to seeing what happens in the next 4 to 5 years. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for joining Marc and I today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. It is always so fun to be here, and I love watching the client journeys and having them share stories with you, because we all are terrified to make a change. I mean, so many people are just scared to make change in general, but let alone if you've been doing something for so long in your firm for the last, 5 to 30 years, and you're like, well, how am I going to make those changes, Michelle? I'm not like Marc. I've got this difference. And it's completely normal, and we get it. But if you really want to make sure that you have and you know what you're worth, and you demand it, and you need the confidence to help you get that, then make sure to head on over to theabundantcall.com so we can identify it and get you really crystal clear on, what are those things that are keeping you stuck and on the hamster wheel, right? Marc said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again. And if you are sick of doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you want your firm to not only be profitable, but growing in revenue so you can have that work-life balance and step away and go on a trip and maybe work part-time somewhere in the world, then book a call. We'll get clear on that. And these calls give you massive clarity. Once again, theabundantcall.com. If you are sick and tired of the vicious cycle of losing sleep, being exhausted and stressed, and powerless, depleted, burnt out, and really want to get on the other side where you can have freedom, you can have peace, and you can have tranquility, because it is possible. And we've seen many people accomplish that. So grab your first spot you see. We've got some slots open in the next 48 hours. And again, theabundantcall.com. And for those of you continuing to listen, make sure to hit subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you, and have a beautiful day.